Okay, we saw that the csv.dict reader was really the way to go from the text file into memory for comma separated data. Now, there's still some things that are not quite perfect. Like, imagine I was given this data. I would somehow want to go through it. If you ask me, what is the average number of beds? Well, I still have to know every single time to say, quote, beds. And if I say bed instead of beds, here, right, crash. That's not great. It's not discoverable what all the rows are, and the rows all come back as text. Even though beds represents a number, it's just a string that came out of a text file. So if I look at the type here, I say type of that should come back as str. Guess what? Type is str because it's a string. We need to convert it to it's either an integer or for things like longitude, latitude to floats. So let's bundle up that sort of implicit knowledge of the format here, and we can put that into a separate class. So I'll create a file and I'll call this just data types. It's kind of a cop-out name, probably a better descriptive name would be great there, but let's define a class and we'll call this, let's just call it a purchase. Right, I was going to call it a real estate purchase, but within the context of our real estate app, hopefully the real estate component is clear. Now, I'm going to show you something that you've not seen in this class about classes. What we've done so far is we've defined a dunder init, and we're going to do that again here. Let me just really quickly sketch out the pieces that are going to go in here. I don't need to see me type this. Okay, so now I've sketched out a fairly complicated initialization method, but it's just a matter of what pieces of data we want to store in here and where do we go. Now, we could go back to program and make it this method, this load files job, to allocate a bunch of those purchase objects, do the conversion type here, and stash the data in here by passing them to the initializer. But this class already knows the structure, and it knows the pieces that it expects. So let's make this class responsible for creating other ones, okay? So we can come over here and define a method. Let's just call this create from dict, something like this. And we'll have call this a lookup or something like that, okay? We'll come down here, we'll say something like this, return purchase, and we're going to allocate one of these things. The first thing that goes in here is going to be the street. So we would say lookup of street, like so. Again, just let me type this out and we'll skip ahead. Okay, so I wrote this method. Now there's a few more things to do here. We want to convert the number of beds into an integer, so we need to parse this. Similarly, we want to convert the number of baths, the square footage, I believe that is an integer, and the price, let's make that a float, just to be safe. Suppose we could do that here as well. Okay, so this will create these purchase objects, and from then on, I can say things like dot, and here's all my list of items, and the price is always going to be a float, and that'll be a strong structure that we can work with in our app. But let's try to use this method. This is not going to be so cool. So come over here to our program. Let's go ahead and make a purchases list here. So we're just going to store all the purchases, basically one for each row. We'll say purchases.append purchase. Let's just say P, keep it short to fit on the screen. So we'll say P equals purchase. We need to import this. If I try this, let's say give it the row here. Row is the dictionary. Try to run this, it's not going to go so well. It says, missing one position, lookup. The other thing that it wanted here is self. Well, in order to use it this way, I have to do this weird thing. I have to say P equals purchase, and I got to create it. And then I have to say P dot. Well, that almost works. Notice this line, the little arrow went away. The line above now says, oh, you're missing these 12 parameters. Yikes. So let's go back to this. This method has nothing to do with the individual objects. It deals with the class, right? This just is associated with this class, but it doesn't have anything to do with this self parameter. It could be a static method. It could be one that we can just call right on the type, and it maybe will allocate instances of the purchase. Now, PyCharm is actually telling us that as well. I see the little squigglies there. It says, you know what? You can make this method static. And the way we do that is we add what's called a decorator. Decorators start with the @ symbol, and they have a cool color in PyCharm. So we can say @static method. There's other things you can say. You could say @property and define a method that would be a property instead of a method, and so on. What we're going to use is static method, and that lets us go back here. Instead of requiring an instance, we say like this: purchase dot create from lookup, and it only takes the dictionary here. So let's go ahead and append these, and let's stop the print out here. I'll just delete those. When we're done, I'll just print. Let's just print the first entry, our first class. All right, run this. Oh, whoops, I meant purchases, not purchase P. There we go. So we got this first one. Now that's not super helpful. Let's use this internal dictionary just to see what the data is like really quick. Here we go. Sale date, such and such, state, number of baths. Perfect. And notice the type residential has a quote, but the number of baths is an actual number. It's the one, not quote one, which means we can do math on it. Similarly for things like the longitude, latitude, number of bedrooms, and so on. So this is great. Now we're just going to return our purchases. What will be in this list? This will be our specifically typed purchase class that knows specifically about the data contained in here. And we can leverage that to help us do math, like ask what is the average number of bathrooms and so on.